Hey everyone, Karen the Warp Spinster here. Thank you for spending some time with me today. I am back to 2.5-inch squares. As you can see, I have some of my bright, bold, modern kind of fabrics, and I also have some 2.5-inch squares. I'm going to try something today that I can see in my head, but I don't know if it's actually going to translate into reality. I am also having one of those weeks when I just seem out of sync with the world somehow. Not horrible, but just kind of just slightly askew, and it's been a bizarre week or two. So I'm also having kind of a low energy, quiet day. We'll see how this goes. So I wanted to go back to 2.5-inch squares because I have a lot of them. It seems to be something that you all are interested in as well, so I thought I would revisit it. This is going to be a fairly straightforward, simple thing. I've been dealing a lot with really small pieces. I'm still working on this, and I'll be doing an update about various things here before too long. But I thought I would try to do something that doesn't make quite so many small pieces to put together. Like I said, low energy day. I do still want to pursue this whole cake pop idea, which is pretty simple. I probably won't even put these in, not sure, but I'm gearing more toward a little larger pieces now. So I'm going to start out with layering, and these would be right sides up on both of them if there were a right and wrong side to your fabric. So I just have this magenta and a white lined up. I know some of you don't consider white to be your favorite color or neutral. In fact, some of you have downright disdain for it apparently. So of course you could use anything instead of where I'm using the white. And I'm just going to do a straight cut through both of them. And I want to make sure that I'm more than 1/2 inch from either of these sides where I'm slicing, because I'm going to be adding a seam in there. So I'm going to keep these straight just to keep it straightforward, I guess. And now I'm going to shuffle these, so I'll just move the top one to the bottom. And now I'm matching these two up. So first thing I'm going to do is sew these together, both of them. And then I think see how they work out together. I'm also going to take another square, right sides up with a white 2.5-inch square, and slice it somewhere different. This is kind of similar to what I do in my pattern that I call Night at the Improv, which is available in my Etsy shop. It's still one of my favorite ones to make. I think I've got 3 of them in the works down on my design wall. And then I'm going to also sew these pairs together. And I'll come back and see how those work out. And I have pressed them to the darker fabric. If I want to now put these together, I can stack them like this. I could, of course, do that as well. And those would match up, and it would make kind of a checkerboard. So, ooh, now here's a thought. What if, this started out to be a simple project. What if we did something like this, sewed those together, and then did another wonky checkerboard? Ooh, that'd be kind of interesting. That's for another day. I could stack them like this. If I want to do it this way, of course, then I'm going to have to include some kind of something over here in order for those to match up. And I'm not thinking about doing that at this point. So for now, I'm just going to leave them like this. I could do a lot of different colors and squares for that. So this is an option. And I'm not worrying about trying to get these to match up in any way. So the ones, of course, that I have cut together are going to match up if I want to do that. But I'm also trying to just do random widths so that I can get an effect more like that. Now, if I want to put a couple of them together, and let's layer, I'll stack 2 different fabrics, not a white in here. And now I'm going to make a random vertical cut here. And I'm going to have it be a little bit off just so they aren't too close, but still staying more than a 1/4 inch from the edge there. Make that cut. Now, I'm going to shuffle again. I want to make these 2.5 inch squares again so that I can turn them however I want to. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to make up for the 2 1/4 inch seams that I'm going to sew here. So that means I have to add a 1/2 inch in there. So I'm going to do that with a strip of white. But of course, when I add in that strip of white, then I have a 1/4 inch on either side of that strip that gets taken up by the seams. So I need 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch. So this is a 1 inch wide strip. So I'm going to insert that in these 2, and we'll see how that goes. And since I introduced this 1 inch white strip here now, I'm back to 2.5 inch squares. So I could line them up like this, or I could rotate them and they would still fit together without needing to introduce any other splices. Probably wouldn't put those 2 right next to each other, of course. You can also put a splice in just a plain square to add a little bit of interest in there. Again, this is a 1 inch strip. I cut it 1 inches. It's now 1/2 inch to make up for the 1/2 inch we lost in the seam there. And again, this can be turned either way to go with those. Any others that are 2.5, you could do just some plain 2.5 inch squares interspersed in there too. These would fit this direction. These are the ones that are missing that 1/2 inch that we lost to that seam, but then you'd still have this issue where you needed to introduce a splice in there. So I could add in another 1/2 inch piece there, or I could add in a 1/2 inch piece of something else, just to add some interest. And then, well, I would cut it a 1 inch piece, of course. And then it could just keep adding some more interest. So you're adding in just a solid thing, then you break it up with this, and then you add a second one right next to that. I could also put it at this end so that it sort of becomes like this, except this is the fabric that makes up the 1/2 inch. Can you tell I'm having an off day? Did any of that make sense? Okay. So those are options. Now I could, let's see if I were to, this down here just to, so you've got kind of a puzzle going on there, or just a random scrap sort of thing with a little bit of order in it, in that they're 2.5 inch squares, or will be. So that's good. I don't mind that at all. Those of you who don't like white, of course, would use something else. But what would happen if we just cut some 1/2 inch strips of, or 1 inch strips, cut 1 inch strips, and they'll end up 1/2 inch. I'm gonna cut this 2.5 inch square into 1 inch strips. That's too little even for a crumb piece. And now I will cut a couple of, what have I got here? This one's kind of funky. This one is almost a collage, sort of a patchwork thing to begin with. But let's do that with maybe this lighter blue color. We haven't used this yet, this seafoam sort of color. I'll didn't get pressed very well. And oh, and that isn't a 2.5 inch square. Well, that won't work very well. So let's do this instead. And I'm just going to make a random cut in here, straight, but not at a particular measurement. Let's go about there. So I'm just lining up some line over here so that I know I've got a straight cut. I'm not worrying about exactly where it is on the square, other than a 1/4 inch away from the edge. Now I'm going to, well, I can either shuffle these or leave them plain and match them up with another fabric, or I could shuffle them. Honestly, I'm kind of liking it this way, at least for this red and that orange. And I've got some orange in here, although it's not the same orange. All right, let me do those, and I think I will add this, a piece on the edge of that too, so I have some more pieces to work with here. And here are some more pieces. In the end, I decided that I didn't want this light orange color in here. It just wasn't right with that sort of golden color. So I took the strip that I trimmed off here and inserted it there, and then just cut another one to use that. So now we have some more that we can use as blocks that we can rotate, move around. Seem to be getting a lot of orange.
I'm sorry.
Poor Siri has been recording all of that as a question. I don't know what I did to wake him up, but there you have it. And I could, that puts red stripes the same, which sort of is good, but maybe not. So I'll put that down here. I would want to have many more color selections than I have here. And I don't have to alternate vertical, horizontal. I can do some that are just straight up vertical, although these are pretty close. It may look like I was trying to be centered and missed, and I may or may not care about that. Got a lot of orange going on up there. Let's do this. And I can put that orange back, bring this down here. So I've got lots of choices for how I could put that together. I think it would be nice to maybe have some plain blocks here and there. I could even, sorry, those of you who don't like white fabric in your quilts, I could even introduce a white every now and then, just a plain white square, or some other plain colors here. And you could make quite a nice quilt, I think. I don't know if you'd want to do a whole quilt this size, but this same thing you could use with 10-inch squares, which is what I do in Night at the Improv. Might at least take a look at the picture in my Etsy shop. And you could also do it, of course, with 5-inch squares or any size square that you have, and it's going to remain the same. This 1-inch cut strip here to insert is always going to remain 1 inch wide, because that's just the allowing for the 1/4 inch seam allowances that you're taking, whatever size square you start out with. I'm trying to think if there's, oh, well, you know me. Once I've got something together, why not splice it and slice it and do something else? So you could, of course, take something and splice a piece in. Let's make that a little narrower. Splice a piece in like that. I'm kind of liking that. And then I could trim it to 2.5 inch squares, because you've got this angle in here. Your measurements to make up are going to be sort of interesting, but you could always, because you've got the 2.5 inch here and that's already done, you could always cut that to whatever size you want, as indeed you could do, of course, with these. You could trim them to whatever size if you decide to use a different size strip there. It's just one more step to trim it off. I may have to do that, although I really love that block as it is. What if I did this? This is a pretty busy block, and I want to see, sorry if I'm getting off frame here, I want to see how it would look if I introduced this white strip across there. So I'm just going to, as I do, just take a diagonal slice up there. I'm going to insert this strip and then see how that works out. And here we're back to trimmed up 2.5 inch square, and I like that. I think that helps that block that's so busy. So we could go back and use that as part of our design that we put together here. I think I might leave those both vertical. And maybe make that one. That's the same insertion we have there. Let me do a blank orange here. And of course I would have many more blocks before I started doing this, but just for the sake of demo here with what we've got. And then I could start adding things in here. Another one here. So that could be fun. You could do it in 9 patches. So let's put in a piece here, for example, and then do sashing in between the 9 patches. You could actually put sashing in between all of these to make this block a little bit larger. You could put this together and slice it and insert another strip in there. I just can't get enough of slice, dicing, and splicing, I guess. And I like that. It's I like having these white in here because this is pretty busy without a place for the eye to rest. So that's why I've also put in some plain colored blocks and some white strips or some neutral strip. Black would really make these colors pop if you wanted to use black strips in there instead. Or a gray would be interesting if you're looking for a modern quilt. If you're using more traditional fabrics, of course, a cream might go really well. I kind of am liking this concept. Not exactly sure where I'm going to go with it, but I do know that if it was all the same sort of block, it would be too busy and chaotic for me. Doesn't mean it would be for anyone else. I guess I could also do, as I'm doing in the, this is a much wider strip than I would use, but say, for example, we did something like that, then that gives a little bit of order to the chaos. Much as it probably seems like I like sort of chaotic, busy quilts, I do really like to have a place for the eye to rest. And it makes you appreciate more what's in the spaces outside of the rest areas. And I'm finding the same thing with this quilt as I'm putting it together, and when I do an update, I will talk more about that. But I don't want the entire quilt to be just this. I like negative space, a lot of negative space in my modern quilts, so I will probably be doing something with these coral colors, peach coral colors, when I do the final design. Actually, it will probably be white, but I will use these to tie it all together. And I have something in my head, but I'm not sure it will work out. So I will probably be sketching it out in Procreate or on the computer somehow so that I can shift things around easily. And I will probably end up doing the same thing with this. I like this because it's a fairly easy concept. You just slice somewhere, insert a strip in there, and then every once in a while you have the full squares. So it's some other piecing and adding some interest to the 2.5-inch squares, but you aren't doing so much that you're working with tiny pieces and just ballooning your work and trying to and creating more scraps as you are trying to use up the scraps you have. So I think that's it for this video. I hope some of you are taking part in the challenge. If you haven't seen the video from Sunday yet, the week 1 of the challenge, I show a few quilts that I've made from challenges and also my process for how I go about taking a prompt from a challenge and creating a quilt out of that. So if that interests you at all, then take a look at that video and certainly join in on the challenge. We're just designing the quilt, we're not making the quilt. So I hope I will see you on Sunday for that. Next Wednesday, I don't know. I'm up in the air about it yet. If you all have suggestions, I've had a couple suggestions and I'm working on scheduling those videos. But I will see you hopefully on Sunday for week 2 of the challenge, when I will show you the design that I did for the demo. I did a little more work on it and have what I think is a final design. I may do more than one. I will also show you the process. I will design with you live, live and in person, how I go about approaching the prompt that I challenged y'all with for week 1. Until then, be well, be happy, be quilting. Peace out.